Hello and welcome to the Media7 summer series at Artisan Winery in West Auckland. It's the season to eat, drink and be merry, and we're about all three this week. We'll tell you a thing or two about food and drink media that may surprise you, and we'll answer the question, just what does John Hawkesby do all day? To lead us in, here's a look at the TV cook who defined what TV cooks were, and he got world famous in New Zealand. The rock star telly chefs, they're everywhere and always giving it a bit of all that. Not just cooks, but entertainers, authors and sex symbols. And remarkably, it all began in New Zealand with Graham Kerr, a young Scot who landed in New Zealand in 1958 to take up a job as catering manager for the RNZAF at Ohakea. A local newspaper column led to radio appearances and then, at the behest of legendary producer Shirley Maddock, one of the first New Zealand TV shows, Entertaining with Kerr.
At the present moment, it looks almost like a sort of, you wouldn't think that you'd make a batter out of that. Well, all you need to do is add a little more beer to it and just give it a slosh up. Still a bit thick. Oh well, yes.
After a couple of episodes, Kerr's wife Trina became producer, launching a creative partnership that has lasted decades.
My part in this was very theatrical. I really knew Graham could go international. I thought that he was great if you could bring out the natural humour of Graham.
This is the Dean Martin show. I've quite forgotten what I'm going to do next.
Kerr was lured to Australia by fellow Kiwi expat Harry M. Miller, and although still officially an Air Force officer, he became a star on both sides of the Tasman. The New Zealand government paid him to advise our producer boards, and the big brands had him flog their wares.
You know, I think that a juicy, well-marbled steak like this one deserves a really excellent mushroom sauce. Maggi mushroom sauce.
Then in 1968, the really big time arrived. A $2 million deal with Canadian Telly to make 650 episodes of what became his signature show, The Galloping Gourmet.
I want you to know that if you're believers and devotees, as I am, in the drinking man's diet, you should be aware of the fact that this is absolutely nil. It doesn't contribute one single ounce to your girth.
Kerr's cooking consisted heavily of saturated fat and alcohol, but his louche playboy vibe won over not just viewers, but a generation of future TV chefs.
I just remember smiling at the television, being so turned on with the style, the panache of the man.
He was the first and one of the very few television chefs to actually sit down and eat a meal on camera. Putting food into your mouth is not something that makes pretty television. And it wasn't the Nigella sort of doing the lascivious, soft porn stuff. Or Jamie Oliver going, wicked, this is wicked.
I think he was probably the first character to make it fun.
We ought to have a little soul music whilst we're doing this, don't you? Just...
Indeed, all those things we associate with Jamie Oliver, the Jack the Lad image, the business and creative control, the celebrity endorsements, even the food activism, Graham Kerr did them first.
Oh, look, that's for my guest, that's for me.
The Kerrs made 450 shows in 2 hectic years before a traffic accident, they were hit by a vegetable truck, knocked them into a new life. An abortive attempt to circle the world in a yacht, a slightly bizarre period of evangelical Christian cookery, and a show with his one-time critic Julia Child.
You'll get an overdone breast.
Yes.
Before a stroke and a heart attack for Trina prompted the low-fat, healthy style for which Kerr is now known.
On average, in the United States, we have about a 6 to 10% success rate of people who want to change their food lifestyles because they have a significant problem. Now, that's 40 times harder than changing a heroin addiction.
Pornography has no socially redeeming value, and neither does a donut.
He's right, of course. But is it wrong of us to still prefer the dashing young man of the 60s? Need more? There's a Galloping Gourmet DVD box set available online, and you can still find this bad boy in second-hand bookshops. It's now my honour to introduce New Zealand cooking royalty, Alison Holst, whose 80-odd cookbooks have sold more than 3 million copies, and her son and now co-author, Simon Holst. Welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, Alison, it's quite nice coming to you after the Graham Kerr thing, because you came right on the heels of Graham Kerr in the 60s, didn't
Yes,
you?
I did. Television had just started in New Zealand, really. And New Zealand housewives did not want to cook the sort of thing that Graham Kerr was cooking. So they complained loud and long to Television New Zealand.
And so Television New Zealand had to go and find someone who made things that New
Yes,
Zealand women actually
so
wanted to cook.
Yes, they went searching for somebody, and I was lecturing at the School of Home Science at the University of Otago in the foods department, and they came and asked my head of department if there was anybody who could do what housewives would like, and she said, yes, her. And
So
then,
what was your starting point? Did we actually have a New Zealand style of cooking that you could draw on, or did you have to, in some respects, invent it?
well, no, we had a lot of good basic things that New Zealanders liked cooking. And I taught classes, I think it worked out about 3,000 different recipes a year. And I had a lot of sort of ideas up my sleeve because of that.
So it wasn't entirely true that we just boiled the buggery out of everything and we were terrible cooks.
No, we weren't.
Because
We
I
were
was
fine.
quite fascinated, reaching for other cookbooks. The New Zealand Women's Institute's cookbook from 1936. I was fascinated by that. We ate a lot more curry than I thought we did.
But sort of funny curry. But
Right.
but those are very interesting books. It's worth looking back to some of these old books and just seeing how many differences there are. But we still make a few of those things.
Yeah, it's the only cookbook I've ever owned that tells me how to cook a swan.
Yes.
Someday when you might need it.
Simon, were you aware growing up of having the famous cook mum?
I mean, a little bit, but it always seemed like a very normal childhood to me. I suppose everyone's does. It was all just completely normal.
Were you always going to be a cook?
No, I mean, I think that being in an environment that revolved around food, had an impact, and I was unaware of that as well. And I'd gone off to varsity and just sort of assumed that everyone was interested in food the way I was, and it slowly sort of dawned on me from there that actually they weren't necessarily, and drifted back towards food from sort of physical sciences.
And started writing as well. This is the first book you wrote together, Meals Without Meat, which our reporter Jose Barbosa speaks very highly of.
A lot of people do still. It's
What was there a demand for that book? Because it's interesting looking at it. It still seems slightly unusual that people would have meals without meat when you read the blurb of the book.
Well, the idea of meals without meat was very new in New Zealand. We are a nation of meat eaters. And when all of a sudden Simon and his friends, your friends were asking you what to do, and Simon kept saying, write a book about meals without meat. And I said, well, perhaps we could do it together over the next 2 university vacations. And we did.
So when was that?
And that book, I don't think it's been out of print. It's
late 80s, I guess we were. I think we probably started working on it 87, 88, something like that. So it's a while back.
20-something years ago.
And, it's one of those. It's how things change. There were vegetarian books around, but they weren't suited to New Zealand necessarily. So it's always that always gives you a different angle, orientating things around the way we do them here.
Well, what was the evolution from the when you started doing this? Because I got the impression that the early 60s when you started was also the time when convenience foods were something, it seemed like something every housewife had to have. She had to have the frozen stuff or the dried stuff. Was there a sense where we lost the plot about cooking at any point?
I don't think so, but new thing, when anything new comes, I can remember when the first frozen peas came. It was very exciting.
I think, I was watching something a while ago, and it was about, even Victorian times, to serve canned meats and things was very fashionable because these were the new thing. So, it's, again, one of the things about food is there is always a new thing, and it makes it fun.
And any time there is something new, people are really interested and want to know just what to do with it. They don't want to do just one thing, they'd like to do several things. And that's where Simon and I sort of come in with new recipes.
So that was part of it, to show people, here's something new to do.
Well, take something that might be familiar and go down a different avenue with it. Those sort of things.
Did you ever encounter the sort of food guilt where particularly with the slow food movement in recent years, it's actually bad for you to do that the easy way? I mean, what do you make of that?
I still think many people want to do things an easy way. And you can do very good things quickly and easily. One of the first programs I did was fish. And because the Fishing Industry Board had sort of asked Television New Zealand, and all of a sudden, New Zealanders suddenly started eating huge amounts of fish because of this fish series. And that, for example, it's hard to cook anything easier and faster than fish. So, these were good things, but were also fast and easy.
So you had a certain degree of power there, it seems.
Well, you don't think of it like that, but I suppose it is, yes.
And there's elements of the ethos in common as well. One of the things that's so food-like is eating together as a family, and I don't, that's a really nice thing to do. And, kind of scary trends at the moment are you hear about houses that don't have a dining table and things like that. And, okay.
So you always had that culture at home?
Absolutely,
not having a TV on.
Yeah, eating. We sat around the table and ate as a family. Yes. It's a nice thing to do.
And it remains a nice thing.
It's still a nice thing. And, sharing food with your friends or family, really, what's better? It doesn't really matter what you're having.
Well, Alison, I can remember some dishes that were presented in my childhood with some amusement. Are there any dishes from back in the early days that make you cringe now?
I can't really think of anything, but just looking through this stuffed marrow, I don't like marrow very much. And what about bread fritters? None of those are in any of my books.
A few mock things as you flip through. Mock, the old mock is always an interesting...
Well, the mock white-back patties were the one, weren't they? But I also remember the prawn cocktail. I could never really work out what the prawn cocktail was about. Did you ever serve those?
No. But then there weren't too many prawns round.
Yeah.
Well, all you could do in those days was sort of buy a can of prawns. That's not too good made into a cocktail, is it?
No. What was your favourite dish when you were a kid?
Oh, favourite. Oh, hard to play favourites. No, I don't know. Favourite. It's very much of the moment.
I can remember Simon saying to a friend, it's no use getting to like anything in this house because she's moved on to the next thing. And that's probably why you can't remember it.
Were there signature dishes for you that all the way through?
Well, I'm sure there were, because there are things, just in the last week or so, people have been talking to me all the time about pineapple Christmas cakes. That was the first Christmas cake that I did on television. And, how many years ago is that now?
It's still going, isn't it?
It's still going, and that's an enormously popular cake.
So, that was one of your greatest hits.
I suppose it was, yes.
What do you make of TV cookery now?
Fascinating.
It's a bigger industry, isn't it?
Oh, it's a huge industry, and here we are, watching programs from all around the world, really. And it's a wonderful way to widen your horizons. It just reminds you of some of the things that you might have made and haven't recently. I like it.
Do you ever fancy being a super chef, Simon?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I don't know that I've got that big personality. I love cooking, and I'm happy to try and tell people about it. But the big whole stage production, I'm not sure that's me.
Well, we'll take a break now and come back with more from the hosts and the story behind Coffee News.